Welcome to Avoiding the
Blitz!
This is the man, the myth, the legend, Fantasy Football Wishlist.
And this is Amber Alert!
Ah,
How's
we're here
my
to give you
voice?
all the news on the shit you probably don't want to hear about. Anyways, hit that like, hit that subscribe so you can see more of these beautiful faces. Also, fantasyfootballadvice.com. We've got a whole app for you where we interact with you and let you know who you need to be drafted, who you need to be dropping. All right. So we're getting into this episode. Scotty, where are we at?
We are actually going to talk. We have two players each that the fantasy community is starting to fade away, but not so fast. Amber and I are going to hold on to these players and tell you why they should be targets for you. Amber,
All right.
do you want to start it up?
Yeah, let's do it. You know what? This is going to be a big faux pas for a lot of people. And I know everybody's talking about Austin Ekeler, but that's my boy. He was my first video ever on Instagram. And I love this man to death. I know he's got the hardest work ethic out there. One of the hardest work ethics out there. Now, so he'll be a primary pass catcher out of the backfield. You know, I'm guaranteeing him seeing 5 to 10 carries per game, but it may seem odd to predict that Eckler wouldn't be the primary ball carrier on the new team, but we already saw the Chargers try to take some of the load off of the aging RB by rotating in other players. So none of these players were especially effective, but the Commanders have an RB in Robinson who has proven to be successful. I expect them to continue to use him. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying that Eckler is going to be oh my God, he's going to be explosive like he was a couple years ago, 20 touchdowns. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that you can buy low and you can hold on to him, right? Because he's going to be useful throughout the season because they're going to maintain and preserve that energy that they need from both of their 1 and 2 backs, right? So now let's see, 5 to 10 carries could amount to 15 to 18 total touches per game. Well, with that type of workload, he would still be a valuable fantasy asset. So there's a reality where Eckler bounces back in a big way, revitalized, by the new situation, but it's going to be impossible to keep him off the field. And, with that lingering ankle issue, I'm sure is handled at this point. I think that he's a solid RB2 with upside. I don't know.
100%. And with the Washington Commanders, they will be behind in games. So they're going to be hitting him up with screens. And with Brian Robinson there, you're dead on. He's going to extend the life of the season for Austin Ekeler. And that's a great choice. With my first choice, it's very easy with running backs. You could pick the Jahmyr Gibbses, the Bijan Robinsons, the Breece Halls, the CMCs. Yeah, we could all easily talk about the first round running backs. But if you go wide receiver heavy and you don't get one of those top elite running backs, last year, this was my 17th ranked running back. So I still fall in love with running back twos. I take pride in my scouting for running backs. This year, I think he is going to still be in that 17 range. People are fading Najee Harris. He has not had a year yet under 1,000 yards. He has not had a year yet under 7 touchdowns. They are upset about when Matt Canada was the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. Najee Harris was rushing for 49 yards per game. Matt Canada's horrible. Once Matt Canada got fired, Najee Harris was rushing for 77 yards a game, almost doubling what he was doing. He's a workhorse. Also, when Najee Harris has more than 14 touches a game, he's never under an RB2. So Najee Harris, I would compare as like a David Montgomery. Boring pick, but safe pick.
Hey, I heard that. We might have to deep dive into why I think Warren's the one, but that's good. I like that. All right, so we're gonna jump in. We're gonna jump into another pick that I'm sure everybody's gonna be like, "What is she talking about?" And does she even know about football? Hollywood Brown. Now, look, we all know the speed that Hollywood Brown possesses. We all know that the Chiefs wide receivers have not been it. We'll call it the Dropsies gang, right? So before the issue with Rashee Rice, now I wouldn't have placed Brown in a position to excel in fantasy. I know that he would have been the veteran on the team, the 1-year contract, right? That you're like, oh, I don't think I'm going to draft him. If not, he's going to be like auto pick at the end of the draft. Fine, whatever. But now that we may be looking at a 1 to 2 game suspension, that's my, prediction for Rashee. We got a lot of time before, we hit the regular season. So it will give Brown the opportunity to like step up and be that bomb catching receiver that could also have major fantasy implications, right? With an older Kelsey and the lack of pass catchers, he could have the opportunity to really be Mahomes' number 2 early in the season. And I think that Rice will pass him in targets over the season on average, right? The average of the season, he'll definitely pass him in targets. But there is a wide receiver 1 upside for Brown on this new team, especially with him having to deal with everything that he had to deal with Kyler getting hurt and, you know, the carousel of quarterbacks in Arizona. So I don't know, man. I'm in on Hollywood. Again, not drafting early, but this is a buy low situation for me.
And I like that because I am lowering my standards on Rashee Rice because I think the suspension might be even more than you're predicting.
Ooh.
So with my final pick, I am going with a guy. If you have the 8th pick in the draft and you see the CMC go, Breece Hall go, Gibbs go, then you got the Amon-Ra go, Chase, Jefferson, Lamb. You have the 8th pick. If I told you, Amber, I'm going to give you a receiver with 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 TDs. I guarantee you this receiver will do this season. Will you pick him with the 8th pick?
I think that sounds like a reasonable.
It does, doesn't it, Amber? 100 catches, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. In dynasty rankings, he's ranked outside the top 24. So this 100, now does this sound even more tempting? 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 TDs as your flex?
Yeah, 100.
Yes,
100%.
your titties are tingling, aren't they? Let me tell you something. Devonte Adams is a steal. And if you are in dynasty leagues and you made the playoffs, you lost in the championship, you lost in the semifinals, you have a late round, first round pick, I would trade Devonte Adams. I would trade the first round pick immediately for Devonte Adams. If you stick Devonte Adams as your flex, you are guaranteed in the playoffs. Oh, but I want the championship. You play fantasy. Once you get into the playoffs, you know anything can happen.
Yeah.
But if Devonte Adams is in your flex spot, he is going to get you into the playoffs. And let me tell you why. They had Josh McDaniels last year. Josh McDaniels, once he was fired and Antonio Pierce came, Devonte Adams in the last third of the season had over 50 catches, close to 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. You put those numbers into a full season, that's 150 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 15 touchdowns. Will he likely do that? Absolutely not. But it will be close to his ranked number 2 wide receiver stats, ranked number 1 wide receiver stats. He was targeted 175 times. They were asked why he was so slow at the beginning of the year. They asked Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers said, he's open on every play. They don't have anybody to get him the ball. So you have Antonio Pierce now. Gardner Minshew's better than Aiden O'Connell. Devonte Adams is still him. There's Tyreek Hill, the old man, who is still elite. Devonte Adams is High Hills 1A. Devonte Adams is 1B. He's better than Diggs. He's better than Evans. He's better than Keenan Allen. I would trade Rashee Rice for Devonte Adams to win your dynasty league this year.
I hear that, man. I hear that. Now, is that with or without Rashee Rice's?
Listen, I'm actually, fuck it. Even if he doesn't get suspended, if I'm going for the championship and I'm 1 player away, I'm trading Rashee Rice for Devonte Adams because Devonte Adams, let's say a horrible year for Devonte Adams. Let's say he does fall flat on his face. He pulls off my career's over. Let's say 80 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's better than DK Metcalf did this year. So put DK Metcalf as your flex. You're still in an amazing position. Get Devonte Adams, win that chip, hit us up in the chat, tell us you won that chip, and we celebrate together. Right, Amber?
Woo! Woo! All right, y'all. You know what to do. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We'll see you soon.